Medieval Mode is an official game mode that was shipped to TF2 during the Australian Christmas update. Like with many new game modes the TF team adds to its lineup, there's usually only one map that ever gets released for it. Not anymore. We have 2.5 maps to work with now. Let's talk about them, shall we? Degroot Keep was the one and only medieval map for quite a while, giving everybody ample time to get acquainted with it. One of the most iconic points of interest is the rock ramp that allows Demonites to fly atop the castle gate. Though not the only ramp suitable enough to make the castle jump, it's accessible to knights of all shield types. The general battlefield is a rolling slope that peaks where the rock ramp is, with the downward slope leading you into the 3 capture points. Point A, or town, is a very closed off area without much to focus on. There's a tiny slot where someone can fit in, but standing there won't count towards the objective. The cliff side is very similar, though one side is open to make room for an entry point around the drum tower. Though not quite as subtle, there's another hiding spot inside the wall. The final point gives blue access to the whole castle, either going straight into the final point or up the stairs and into the battlements. At the top of the castle walls, you can access side paths that lead you towards points A and B with a brazier on each end. There's a couple of funny spots you can access that don't serve any meaningful purpose, but it's still good to know. Berghausen is the newest official map, and unlike Degroot, it only requires a single point to be captured or defended to win the round. Similar to maps like Dust Bowl, there's 3 stages to play on that are only accessible upon a blue victory. The first of these is an open courtyard that goes straight into the control point. There's 4 massive trees surrounded by rocks that litter the map in a diamond formation. The rocks may be able to let Demonites trimp off for crazy schmovement, but on this map it doesn't let you access areas others can't. On one of the walls of the castle, a rock formation is there to be used as stairs, allowing every class to access the usual sniper spots. The control point on this map looks a bit like Degroot Keep last, but with 2 side paths open to access the rest of Red's castle. The second stage is set in more of a town square area. There's a large structure in the middle that serves to shelter Blue Team, with a fence that gives cover to those who exit the rightmost spawn door from it. There's also this thing. On the opposite side, Blue can enter and exit a clock tower that takes him to the objective. On both sides of the control point, you have Red Team's spawn exits, giving them quick access to both the point and a resupply locker. The Berghausen finale takes place deep inside the castle. Blue starts off on one side of the bend, which splits into 3 branching paths leading to the point. The path of higher elevation features a round tower that gives Blue a pretty good checkpoint before the actual point. The middle path is a straight shot to the objective, and by hugging the inner wall, you can go through a tunnel that allows you to see inside Red's spawn a bit. Speaking of, just like in Berg 2, Red has 2 exits on both sides of the point, but with even easier access to the resupply cabinets. They're placed in a way where you can still be shot from the battlefield. Finally, we come to Sandcastle. This half-new map was released on... It's the Halloween edition of Degroot Keep with some slight tweaks, a functioning underworld portal, and spells! Compared to vanilla Degroot, Point A lacks the hiding slot and replaces it with a truck. There's a mouse hole that users of Patum Solaris can access that allows for instant travel between points A and B and vice versa. When both of these points are captured, a portal opens to the side of the charge ramp that takes you into the underworld. You first avoid moving saw blades in the shed, jump around some toy block structures, and navigate a grill with an assortment of delicious meats. It's worth noting that you can ride that choo-choo on the toy block section, and it'll clip you into the block where you can die slowly. Heavies can survive forever on this part by camping the health kit, and all classes can just chill on the cheeseburger. Nothing will kick you out of the underworld either. Back to the map, it prevents you from standing on the corner roof by the final point, giving you only tiny pegs to work with. Some other slight geometry changes were made that can impact how you play, but it's incredibly minimal at best. This video is not sponsored by Microworks, but I wanted to give it a shout out because it's a cool free game that takes the concept of TF2ware and puts it into a standalone title. It's a good time and I thought you, yes, you might like it. It's not free, but you should also play Robot Roller Derby Disco Dodgeball. My friends and I play this game every so often and it's always a blast. Fun 2010s era soundtrack too. Give them both a try. Now you know the kingdoms, but do you know the subjects? How about what weapons they use? Let's dive in. But I'll just quickly note that this time around, I won't be talking about weapons that are straight up useless and outclassed. That means none of these ones. The first class is the Scout. He runs the fastest of the lot, sports a double jump, and captures the point 2 times faster than everybody else. On the other hand, he has low base health and melee damage output. Can Scout's arsenal make up for these shortcomings? Let's dive in. Bonk provides Scout with a quick burst of invincibility in a pinch, letting him weave through enemies or get back to spawn. When the invincibility wears off, he suffers a hit to his movement speed that varies depending on how much damage was absorbed. In practice, it doesn't serve him quite as well as the other secondaries, but it can be used for some funny taunt kill moments. For some reason, holiday punch heavies can still make you laugh. Compared to Bonk's defensive purposes, Criticola makes Scout a more dangerous fighter. Giving himself mini crits can make up for the damage penalty he suffers on his own, though he also takes mini crits too. It's great for singling out targets and becomes less effective when fighting groups of enemies that can prevent you from dodging their strikes. Mad Milk is a throwable that coats enemies in something that gives back a percentage of health upon damaging them. In a pinch, it can put out fires caused by lit arrows or pyros too. Though it's a very good option for team support, Blue can't make use of it nearly as well as Red can. In all medieval maps, Scout can throw milk on the point and hit the resupply locker on such a frequent basis that foes trying to capture the point will nearly always be coated. It combos very well with users of the Neon Annihilator, and is the only way to make a case for using it. The Flying Guillotine is one of Scout's only ranged means of attacking. It also comes with a very low recharge timer that's further bolstered on a long range hit, encouraging frequent use. This weapon makes hit and run strategies with Scout a very real threat, and it's not uncommon to see it used more than his various bats. It is worth mentioning that the Cleaver combos with the Rap Assassin of all things. Both feature a projectile that inflicts bleeding, but what I didn't know before was that they operate separately. This means enemies bleed twice at the same time, inflicting alarming amounts of damage very quickly. When not considering the Cleaver, the Rap Assassin serves an identical purpose. The bobble shot from the weapon deals splash damage around a certain radius, but only a direct hit will inflict bleeding. When looking at the wrapping paper by itself, it boasts cripplingly low damage output and struggles to kill anything. Scouts probably won't be getting into melee range at all if they use this weapon, and forces them more into a hit and run role that they can absolutely fill. The Sandman is another bat with a projectile. The baseball you fire will slow enemies on hit and deal some damage, allowing you to follow up and finish them off up close. Unlike the Rap Assassin, the bat is actually useful for damaging enemies. The baseball can be picked up again after it lands, allowing you to shoot it again right away. Users of the Rap Assassin can steal your baseball and turn it into a bauble too, which is hilarious. The health downside of the Sandman doesn't mean too much in terms of survivability against enemy melee users, but it would mean a fully charged arrow will kill you in one hit. The Candy Cane should be strongly considered because it means slain enemies drop 2 small health kits instead of 1. This can either fill 2/5 of your health in quick succession or give you and a buddy each 1 kit to work with. While explosive damage will deal bonus damage to you, it means next to nothing here in medieval mode, as there's only one source of it in the game. Ullapool Cabers will probably kill a scout regardless. The general idea is that the more there are small health kits on the ground, the better, and it's up to you to make them. The cherry on top of all this? It doesn't matter what weapon you kill your enemy with. Merely having the Candy Cane is enough to spawn the double health. The Atomizer will only be used for 3 reasons, and one of them is the triple jump. On Degroot Keep, you can actually scale the wall and make it to the battlements from point A using the castle windows and the flagpole. It looks like you can't do this on Sandcastle because one of the necessary windows on the castle is gone, but you can still do it by jumping off the truck's hood and onto the flag. Another reason is to taunt kill, as only this weapon and the Sandman have this ability. Lastly, Scouts will use it to get to a funny spot on Degroot last. Since it deals less damage overall, unless you're mini-critting, it's generally not worth the time of day. The Boston Basher has pretty stock stats, but with an on-hit bleed effect that can also hit you if you miss an enemy or a wall. Idiot! But it doesn't end there, because hitting yourself will produce some meaningful knockback when used with a jump. A real dumbass can use this momentum and height to scale the Degroot wall, so who's the idiot now? The on-hit bleed effect also stacks with the Flying Guillotine, so just like a certain wrapping paper, it can combo for intense bleed damage. Overall, a solid pick since it provides some personal utility and a higher average damage output than your stock Scout. The Fan of War is an option that turns Scout into almost pure support. It pairs well with the Flying Guillotine due to giving Scout a way to follow up on his own marked targets without putting him in danger. One swing from the fan and one cleaver with full bleed duration can kill light classes from full health. It combos well with the Bushwhacker or itself because of the crit on mini crit stats they share, allowing snipers to potentially cleave through big targets. Even if you deal crits while an enemy is marked, it's highly unlikely that you will secure a kill by yourself, since a crit won't even exceed the damage value of a non-crit stock hit. The Sun on a Stick is a pretty good option when it's comboed with anything that can set enemies on fire. It can operate without the presence of it, but it's obviously much worse than stock with its bad damage. When used against burning targets, it actually keeps them lit on fire, allowing you to inflict extremely high damage very quickly. Only problem is that fire is unreliable due to the presence of small health kits dropped by slain enemies. The final weapon is a literal straight upgrade from stock. The Holy Mackerel's game-changing and generally humiliating announcement on hit and kill makes it honestly something worth using. I guarantee that you'll have fun with this weapon, and if you don't, get good until you do. When taking a final look at the Scout, he has just about everything he needs to negate his downsides, or support his team in meaningful ways. Milk or mini crit support is always welcome, while having ranged attack options will allow you to strike early or pick off those on the retreat. You should never underestimate the scrawny Scrapper, because he's 100 feet away from your location, and rapidly approaching. The Soldier is one of the most iconic classes in medieval mode. He may move slow, but he has enough health to survive the critical 195 threshold. Not only that, he has one of the deepest pools of items to choose from here. The secondary slot is usually home to various backpacks that can bolster your team for a short time. The buff banner will provide you and your team with mini crits around a certain radius. Any damage buff to yourself is good, but enabling your whole team to potentially brute force your way in can flip the whole match. That is, if you stay alive. The Conqueror will provide Soldier with a small passive health regen, aiding in long-term survivability after a fight. Unlike the other two backpack items, the Conqueror only requires 480 damage to fully charge the banner, making it more consistent. You supply everyone around you with faster movement speed and health on hit, which also gets rid of Soldier's main problem. If you play carefully and aggressively, you can go on a tear through just about anything that can't immediately put a stop to you. The battalion's backup passively gives Soldier 220 health, which can grant him more survivability, mainly against chip damage. It also means he recovers more from health kits. Deploying the banner grants him and his team good damage resistance from all sources, but most importantly, blocks all crits. This includes headshots and situational things like charge crits. In a game mode characterized almost entirely by random crits, this becomes a potentially massive buff that can turn the tide on any skull cutters. When looking at all the backpacks and comparing them, the buff banner provides the least amount of potential due to the presence of random critical hits on most weapons. They don't require damage to build up and are generally more reliable than waiting for a banner's activation. It can bolster things like the Bushwhacker and the Fan of War to deal full crits, but that's it. The Conqueror does give Soldier better survivability pre-buff, making it good right off the bat. The buff stacks with the health kits that drop from killed players, which can very quickly fully heal you, or someone else. It's a tough call whether or not it's better than the battalion's backup, but the passive health regeneration may be slightly better than a flat 20 more health. That being said, it cannot be overstated how good preventing crits is, as any other banner can be taken out with a quick Randy at any point. The base jumper doesn't provide any real advantage outside of preventing fall damage, but at least you get to visit the island with your Demoman buddies. The only other thing Soldier can equip in his secondary slot is the Trolldier Timbs. They only have one niche, and that's to jump off the Degroot Keep battlements in hopes that you land on someone. If you can't, kill yourself and try again, or switch off the Mantreads. Should the stars align and you actually stomp someone, it can deal a very solid hunk of damage, allowing you to finish the enemy off by quick follow-up strikes. If you think you'll level up your Strange like this, it's extremely unreliable at killing. The Equalizer will deal less damage when you are healthy, and more when you're almost dead. While it has the potential to flip various fights around in an instant, the unreliable nature of it being weak at the start makes it really quite tough to use. Even if you kill someone, you'll probably run over a health pack which could cripple your damage output for the next fight. The escape plan is what you would rather use if you had to pick between the two. Instead of dealing more damage, you move faster the lower you are on health. While taking mini crits means you take more damage overall,
the speed boost really does come in handy to either get out of a bind or outmaneuver a single target. It's nice to be able to move fast, but you'll want to keep your health sustained so you won't die from a stray breeze. Like the Equalizer, you heal less from both the Amputator and the Crusader's crossbow, but this can be negated by switching to your banner. Both pickaxes can perform a suicide taunt kill that can blow up multiple people if they're caught within your radius. The Pain Train is certainly an option. In practice, neither stats of it really make much of a difference, but it does have the general reliability of stock damage and random crits. Capturing points faster can mean a lot if you're on your own, but it means less when you're in a big group. The only sources of extra damage you'll face are arrows, crossbow bolts, and shield bashes for some reason. All three are relatively common in medieval, so you'll have to be more careful in dealing with those specific classes. The disciplinary action is absolutely crazy with what it provides Soldier. Being able to whip a teammate in order to run faster is much more reliable than building up and unleashing a conch banner. Not only that, but it's widely known knowledge that it has the longest melee range in the game. So long, in fact, that it reaches just ever so slightly behind you too. Being able to swat everyone at a safe distance can give you an early lead should you clash with an enemy. Even if you cause one to retreat, your exceptional range could catch the turn back of a coward. Now it's true that the whip deals less damage overall, but it can still randomly crit. All it takes is just one to flip the script on your enemies, and they aren't hard to come by. It just goes to show how good something with random crits can be when given a longer melee range. The half Zatoichi is a good weapon no matter who it's on, but Soldier appreciates it more than Demo. Though it has less range than the funny whip, it still gives Soldier a farther reach to work with to make up for him being slow. Because the health on kill can transfer into overheal, it can be easy to go on a tear with this weapon if you're in the thick of it. The real reason why soldiers like this weapon so much is because killing a rival katana wielder can potentially fill your banner meter instantly. Just like a backstab, katana wielders will suffer 3 times their current health as damage when killed this way, and usually they're quite healthy before they attack you. With great timing, you can completely stuff a charging Demoman in order to quickly turn the tide of battle with your Warhorn. It's hard to overstate just how good of a weapon it is, specifically on Soldier, and it really does make him feel like a slow Demo Knight at times. Overall, Soldier is just a big bag of tricks. He brings almost unparalleled utility with him in the form of his banners, and impressive manpower no matter what he uses. The roles he can play on his team are so different that the various types of soldiers play almost entirely differently from one another. He literally has God and anime on his side. So watch out, commies. The Pyro is third, and comes equipped with fairly average stats, save for his moderately high pool of HP. She may not have any secondaries to choose from, but has a good selection of melee weapons to bring into combat. The Extinguisher is in a rough spot in medieval, since fire damage is rather hard to come by. Unlike the Sun on a Stick, it doesn't keep enemies on fire after a successful hit. The speed boost you get on kill doesn't even activate when you kill someone who isn't on fire. So without the presence of it, it's straight dookie. The Sharpened Volcano Fragment is one of 2 ways you can set people on fire in standard medieval play, and is arguably better than a Huntsman Arrow for the job. There's multiple weapons that can combo with an enemy lit on fire, and you would be the one to enable it. When not considering team plays, the weapon still has its uses. Fire damage can rack up over time if your enemy can't find a health kit fast enough, and in some cases can finish him off. Having some form of compensation like that can help if you die while an enemy is still on fire, though if you're killed, chances are the enemy already picked up your health kit. The hot hand slaps, but it also doesn't. In practice, the double swing attribute is terrible since you can easily miss one of the swings, dealing half of your intended damage. The slight speed boost on hit is okay for chasing down things like scouts, but this isn't Pyro's only option to give him faster movement. The real reason anybody would equip this glove is for the sake of taunt killing the enemy, like so. The Neon Annihilator can only function alongside a scout with Mad Milk. That being said, with how good Milk can be, it makes you genuinely threatening. Soaked enemies will take critical damage and heal a very sizable chunk of your health, granting the Pyro some very impressive sustainability. Without Milk, it's not great since you cannot deal crits, and your damage output trails behind the Sharpened Volcano Fragment. The Power Jack is what the Extinguisher and the Hot Hand wish they were like, featuring a flat speed boost that lets Pyro outpace almost anything that isn't a scout. Combining the speed with health on kill lets Pyro survive pretty well compared to some of her other weapons. Damage vulnerability from all sources is a pretty glaring downside, making it unwise to charge in with reckless abandon. you can be picked off much easier by things like arrows or stray hits, so it's best to play smart with it. The back scratcher is honestly a good contender for the best weapon in the mode. Any class would love to have this, but here it is on Pyro only. Not only is it your best source of damage, but there's also almost zero downsides to equipping it. Amputator taunts heal you slowly, but crossbow bolts have no healing penalty on you for some reason. Not like this sort of thing matters, since small health kits can be found almost anywhere. All this comes alongside a damage boost with the ability to crit, making it as ruthless as something like the Skull Cutter. The third degree is a straight upgrade from your default fire axe, and all it does differently is hit a medic while he's using the amputator taunt. This upside is very specific, since you'll find medics with their crossbows more often than not. Pyro may be kind of one note without team support, but she can still make it work. With good communication, he can be a potent combo starter and enable team-based strategies. It's never a bad thing to have a Pyro on your side. Strap in, folks! It's time to cover the poster knight of the game, Mr. DeGroot himself. He sports similar stats to the Pyro, but with a touch lower movement speed. This isn't a problem because, as we all know, Demoman can and will find a way to close the distance between him and you. Let's waste no time. He's almost guaranteed to equip either of his boots in the primary slot, as both will give him more health and slightly increase his speed for free. These two stats by themselves cancel out a lot of negative attributes found on some of Demo's melee weapons, as you'll find out later. It's also worth noting that it grants the wielder the ability to make tighter turns while charging, though this doesn't apply to the Tide Turner. The base jumper has more use on Demoman than Soldier, since you'll find a lot of flying men charging off a slope on any map. While negating fall damage is nice, it's not going to be used quite as much as his boots. From here on, everything discussed will assume you have the booties equipped. There are 3 shields Demo can equip in his secondary slot, but only one of them is outclassed by its contemporaries. The Charge and Targe is mainly known for its resistance to fire and explosive damage, which doesn't have much bearing on Medieval. You take less damage from a lit arrow compared to a regular one, which is kinda funny. You still get a charge and crits at the end, so it is indeed serviceable. On a personal anecdote, it's my ride or die shield, but the upsides almost never come in handy for me. The Splendid Screen is more suitable for Medieval, sporting extra shield damage and a cooldown that only lasts half as long. Even if it didn't carry its resistances, it would still be a better option than the Targe. It's not uncommon to see the bash and melee swing combo kill most things instantly, and being able to do this more often is only going to benefit you in the end. It's ideally comboed with the Persian Persuader or the Eyelander, but we'll get to that in a bit. The Tide Turner is a really crazy shield. While the resistances are negligible at best, the fact that you have unparalleled turning and tripping ability makes you the most mobile of all the classes. You also don't get a full crit at the end of the charge, but that doesn't stop certain axe wielders from abusing random ones instead. It's not uncommon to see charges getting chained together with the constant replenishment it provides on kill, and it's very hard to stop a charging Demo once he starts. Trimping can be done on just about any surface with a slope, and those can be found on just about any map. Though less of a thing on Berghausen, there are multiple slope surfaces you can make use of on all 3 areas of the map. These include, but aren't limited to, the rocks on Berg 1, the stairs on Berg 2, and the ramp on Berg 3. While it's nice to have this as an option, with how the map is designed for more of a grounded style of play, it's probably better to use the shield bash in your maneuverability to attack. On DeGroot, every shield can ramp up to the battlefield, but with the Timmy Turner, you can go even further beyond. A knight wouldn't be one without a handy sword, and Demo has no shortage of them. The Eyelander is potentially Demo's greatest weapon. It starts him off with 25 less health, but it's completely negated by the boots he can equip. The point of this weapon is to completely snowball out of control once you hit 4+ heads with it. When you reach this critical point, you move almost as fast as the scout, and your shield bash damage improves exponentially. So much, in fact, that a Splendid Screen charge can immediately kill a light class from full health. Worth noting is that Dead Ringing Spies will still add a head to your total, allowing you to farm off them. Another thing is that when you have 4 heads, booties equipped and full health, you can survive a Skull Cutter crit with just 1 health to spare. Each kill will replenish your health by 15 points, and when combined with the small health kits, it will provide Demo with reliable self-sustainability. Any heads acquired while already at 4+ and at full health will overheal you slightly, which is nice. Lastly, kills made against other Eyelander demos will snatch the heads they collected and add to your tally. This weapon gives you half a second longer charge, letting you get that extra little bit of range you need to reach your enemy. It may take some adjusting to, as the window for the charge crit is a little later than normal. Kills will refill 25% of your charge meter, which when combined with the booty bonus, gives you half of your whole charge back instantly. Sadly, that means the Tide Turner renders this upside completely irrelevant. Not only that, but there's another sword that can refill charge meter on a more consistent basis. The 15% vulnerability is arguably worse than the Islander's flat health reduction because it doesn't give you any compensation for dying faster. There's a reason why it's still as unpopular as ever. This here is what I meant by more consistent. The Persian Persuader is designed to enable constant charging action without the use of a Tide Turner. In fact, the main shield to equip it with would be the Splendid Screen, as they synergize incredibly well and come from the same item set too. Killing someone with a sword will net you the on-hit recharge and the booties refill, but you might also collect a medium ammo box which puts it all the way full. Best part is that this works with the charge and charge too, despite its slower recharge timer. Something to note is that if you pick up an ammo box while charging, the meter will replenish and you may miss it on your charge crit window. The Zatoichi is back in black, and it works out differently in these hands. You don't have to play as cautiously as the soldier, as you can shield bash and force a crit to guarantee a kill on almost everyone. It may not be as useful as it is for soldier, but it's far more dangerous on demo. Out of all the swords, it gives him the most health back on kill, and that's especially dangerous in the hands of a class that can go literally anywhere he wants. But there is one more sword to discuss. Actually, it's not a sword at all. It's a monster. It's the most popular demo melee. It's the goddamn Scotsman Skull Cutter. It's not hard to see why people live and die by the axe, since it's the only sword type weapon to have random crits and boosted damage. Those three factors are what makes it so dangerous in the first place. If you get one crit, you are bound to get another very soon. Since one will kill 8 out of 9 classes within normal circumstances, it's very hard to fight a Skull Cutter once he gets going. The slower movement speed on wearer is noticeable, but by no means a deal breaker considering charging exists. You travel a little less far on a charge due to your movement speed penalty, but you should have no problem reaching an enemy if you're used to it. All of this combined, and you start to see why it's the most common sword in the mode. It's just easy to use and easy to perform well with. It doesn't need conditional buffs to your health and speed. It doesn't need half a second longer charge duration. It doesn't need to heal half your health upon kill. It doesn't need to give you charge meter on hit. It doesn't even need a taunt kill. All it needs to do is get that one crit to start you off. That, my friends, is the Scotsman Skull Cutter. But perhaps swords aren't your dig. You want to challenge the status quo with your own brand of Scottish death. That's why the next two weapons exist. The Pain Train is shared with Soldier, and once again, serves to benefit your team at the cost of taking more damage from only 3 sources in the game. In the hands of a demo, you're a more capable fighter and can dodge sources of bullet damage much easier. There isn't a huge case to be made for using it over one of the swords, but it can be a little easier to win a fight right off the bat due to the presence of crits. Nobody will expect this weapon either. The People's Champion, otherwise known as the Ulupul Caber, will do exactly what you expect it to do. It's always recommended to pair the attack with a charge crit, as you'll destroy absolutely any class unfortunate enough to be on the receiving end. The splash damage is comparable to an airstrike rocket, but we don't know what that is here in medieval mode. It's been given a new life on Berghausen 2 and 3 since the resupply cabinets are so close to the point, allowing you to constantly spam critical explosions on the attacking team. For light classes, it's instant death. Only the bulkiest of men can take an explosion of that caliber, but even they can't tank 2 of them. Essentially, no matter what Demoman equips, he can make it work extremely well. It's more so a testament to how good the shield and boots are, and you aren't switching off of melee anyways. The ability to traverse great distances and essentially control when you unleash a crit or mini crit cannot be understated. It makes everything feel powerful. Yes, it even bolsters something like a used caber and can help when making the trek back to the resupply cabinet. What it all comes down to is that Demoman's here to stay, and he will forever shape the landscape of medieval mode until the very end. We arrive at the big man himself, the Heavy. Sporting the highest HP and slowest speed, he's a wall that you need to break down before you can complete your objective. He won't make it easy either, for he sports a wide array of items that will help him kill you. The Sandwich has a reputation that precedes it, and serves as the game's best vibe check. It heals you so fast that you could potentially eat it in the face of danger and be okay. But what if you throw it at an enemy? The buffalo steak sandwich is for when you actually want to try. Now that you can run a lot faster, you should be able to catch up to many enemies and punch them to death. You can get creative with where you eat it, or even use an enemy to cancel the animation. It enables Heavy's deadliest strategies, and is half the reason he's as feared as he is. The other half we'll get to later. The Delocos Bar is able to be eaten and recharged quickly for frequent snack breaks. Compared to the sandwich, it's more reliable on average, and grants you better team support, making it a good choice. 50 extra base health is pretty useful since it affects how much health you regain upon running over a health kit. And then there's the second banana, which is even healthier than the chocolate. It recharges just as fast, but with double the healing, potentially outclassing the sandwich too. If you can dip in and out of combat reliably and heal, then you'll be a hard man to take down in a more honest battle. When comparing all of the food options, Heavies typically use the buffalo steak over its companions due to the offensively oriented buffs. Though it's nice to be able to run off and heal, the average Heavy would rather be able to catch up with his competition so he can punch them to death. Basically, the more small health packs you personally spawn, the less of a need for the health sandwiches. The gloves of running urgently and the eviction notice are both sadly less than ideal options here. Having your base health constantly drained is a big turnoff, since you can have as low as 100 health while fighting people. The speed boost on hit for the eviction notice doesn't really help it in the long run either, as it's about as gimmicky and practical as the hot hand. At least the Gru is marginally better at killing, but it's still not recommended to use either of these, especially since they don't stack with the steak at all. The Holiday Punch is in an odd but totally welcome spot here in Medieval. It's hard to fight anything that has the chance to crit, but when that crit can immobilize you completely, you're as good as dead, even if you would be dead had that crit dealt damage instead. It's worth noting that your opponent has to be grounded in order to laugh, so there are situations where your crit punch can do absolutely nothing. Users of the Funny Mittens are most likely going for taunt kills after they claim a victim, but there's so many factors that can shift you or your target just slightly to the side and you miss. It's generally more reliable to punch them to death afterwards. The Fists of Steel will let you survive headshots and die from everything else. If you're this paranoid of snipers, you should learn to dodge instead. There's two big boys of the heavy meta, and are what you'll mostly see being run. The first of them being the Warrior Spirit. With damage output that brings the Skull Cutter to its knees, it's something you just can't take lightly. You may be more vulnerable, including it stacking with the effects of the Buffalo Steak Sandwich, but getting health back on kill will help mitigate this issue. Using the steak in the bare hands, you're able to one-shot light classes with health penalties like the Big Earner Spies or Sandman Scouts. Like the Skull Cutter, it can ramp up damage super quickly, allowing you to potentially snowball with this weapon in random crits. The Killing Gloves of Boxing may boast a slower swing speed and less damage output, but it does what the Warrior Spirit does more consistently. The Buffalo Steak is a must-have with this, since you'll need whatever buffs you can to secure that first kill. Once there, you can annihilate nearly everything unaware or unfortunate enough to be within uppercut range. There's a reason why most heavies are seen with this weapon, as it's one of the best options to either defend or capture the point. People will be scared of you once you start glowing, so it's good to have a sense of when to retreat and lose the crits versus when to slaughter babies. Due to the nature of the heavy, he's arguably one of the biggest targets in the field. He can either demolish an enemy team or be the demolished. He can always rear up and try again if he fails, and revel in the blood, salt, and tears of his enemies if he gets his moment to shine. Engineer has a conundrum. He's known for his technological prowess in home defense systems in the modern age, but can't access any of it here. He also sports low health and only average speed, so what's a man to do about this? The answer? Use a wrench. And if that don't work, use more. Starting out small, we have the Jag. It's interesting as it's one of the only weapons with a faster swing speed, but in practice you're not going to get much out of it. If you can somehow chain multiple crits in a row, there's a case to be made for using this, but you're not outputting nearly enough damage to ramp up your crit rate in the first place. The Southern Hospitality is interesting because bleed damage is somewhat hard to come by here. A single hit can theoretically deal over 100 damage, but that assumes the bleeder doesn't run over a small medkit at any point. The no random crit attribute is actually quite a detriment too, since it's hard to eke out a win against more healthy opponents. If he ends up killing you first, you can forget about the possibility of a posthumous kill, since he will very likely pick up the health kit you dropped. The Eureka effect is a straight upgrade here and essentially gives you a get out of jail free card. Though you can't pick and choose where you want to go, returning from spawn in tip-top shape is always a plus. It's useful for very niche situations like returning to the keep after the gate closes. Finally, we get to the Gunslinger. The health bonus actually makes a large difference here, as now you can survive 2 standard non-crit melee hits. The combo crit actually makes this weapon a pretty effective heavy slayer, as they can't survive all 3 hits unless they have the DeLocos bar health. Finally, it gives Engie one of his taunt kills. It has a long windup, but man does it feel good to give an enemy. He's been stripped of any team support options, so now he has just himself to worry about. He'll live and die a warrior's death. That I can guarantee. The medic is a very adaptable guy, and that doesn't change in medieval mode. He has good base health, decently high movement speed, and passive health regeneration that puts him in a good spot compared to his teammates. Like the engineer, he lacks his important tech, so how does he manage here? It can't be overstated how good the Crusader's crossbow is. Though better for healing than killing, it can nonetheless be spammed on a contested point and you'll still accomplish something. Very rarely will you find yourself in short supply of ammo, since you're given a very generous helping of it to begin with. It's worth noting that it passively reloads when inactive, allowing you to switch between melee strikes and the bolt for a scary offensive combo. It's more often than not that the crossbow is the only thing between you and an enemy headed your way, so just having it is a solid deterrent. Medic will very likely have the amputator here in medieval, as it's the only other source of healing he can have. You can patch up multiple people in a large radius at the rate of a medigun, and this is also affected by how long it's been since the patient has been damaged. This kind of move puts you at risk, but ideally would be used when surrounded by a team that can protect you from all angles. It's an amazing tool on both offense and defense, as it's hard to overcome a large group that's constantly being healed, not to mention the amount of assist points it'll grant you. The damage penalty is a minor inconvenience, but it's not a slouch when it comes to killing if you score a crit. As a medic, you'll ideally be staying out of the fight, or if you have to, combo with your crossbow for more damage. The Solemn Vow is by no means a bad choice. You don't heal anybody by taunting and you have a slightly slower swing speed, but seeing enemy health is quite beneficial. You can pick and choose who you might want to engage, and use your knowledge to snipe weakened enemies. The swing speed penalty can be negligible at best, and you'll still be able to hold your own in combat. It does mean, however, that your enemy will be able to swing before you do and flip the fight against you. At least it isn't as bad as the Ubersaws, which nobody should be equipping at all. The only thing it's good for is taunt killing. No matter what era he finds himself in, the medic will always have a place in battle. He has support and offense all wrapped up in one package, and can even excel without the team. It only takes one to turn a good team into a great team, and that man could be you. The Sniper is one of the only classes that can make use of all 3 of his available loadout slots. He has poor health and average speed, similar to the Engineer, but can his vast weaponry let him overcome these shortcomings? The answer is yes, by the way. Sporting the most powerful ranged attack in the game, the Huntsman is a completely ubiquitous option here. A fully charged headshot will kill just about anyone no matter what, even preventing things like dead ringers from activating. Across all maps, there should be a bunch of braziers you can light up on, tacking chip damage on top of an already powerful shot. It's worth mentioning that when you light your arrow, it switches from dealing bullet-based damage to fire damage. Something like this sounds negligible, but it means you'll be dealing less damage against shielded Demonites or other snipers using the Darwins. Unlike the Medic's crossbow, the Huntsman can't automatically load when you switch off. It still has combo potential, but you only get one shot. Not only can it do all of this, but it comes with what is arguably the game's best taunt kill. Sure, it has 2 parts to it and one may not lead into the other, but it activates so fast that it's even worth considering as a Hail Mary option. Darwin's Danger Shield has very little practical utility, as fire damage is somewhat hard to come by. It's highly unlikely that you'll be fighting volcano pyros up close, but it is nice to be able to tank flaming arrows better. Just don't get headshot. The Cozy Camper gives snipers similar survivability to that of the Conqueror Soldier. Flinching means a bit less in medieval, but it helps if you're suffering from fire or bleeding. It gives you some independence from health kits, and can allow yourself to stay in the fight against other bowmen if you can dodge well enough. The Razorback is no mere meme here, since spies can't shoot you with a gun. It's a perfect deterrent against one of the most dangerous classes in the game, and will prevent them from wanting to take you on. The fact that spies can't knife at all for a short time means they'll be forced to retreat after stabbing you. Just make sure you avoid another encounter before your Razorback recharges. The The Tribalman Shiv has the same issues as the Volcano Fragment in the Southern Hospitality, and is unlikely to make any lasting impact. A critical hit can one-shot a light class if enough bleeding accumulates, but if you're fishing for a random crit, it's better to use any other weapon for a more instantaneous death. The Shahansha is kind of a gimmick, but potentially a good one. You won't want to be looking for direct combat, so it's best used when someone forces his way into your personal bubble. If you're lucky, you could potentially crit on low health and take out even the strongest of Demonites instantly, but you'll most likely step on a medkit afterwards. This makes it better for one-on-one fights instead of taking on multiple foes, but that's what you should be already doing as Sniper. The Bushwhacker isn't a popular option here since being vulnerable to all damage sources is not great. What it does is combo with Fan of War Scouts and buff Banner Soldiers to crit everything to death. Truth be told, Sniper doesn't really need to worry about what he picks for his kukri, and plenty just run stock to get away from the unfavorable drawbacks of his other options. What it all boils down to is that there's really only one thing Sniper needs in order to succeed, and it's enough to keep him a medieval mainstay. Be sure to pay close attention, or you may find yourself dead in an instant. The final class is the Spy, and the very nature of medieval mode will force everyone to play his game. His HP is low, his foot speed is pretty fast, and he's got an unconventional melee weapon. Combine that with his cloak and his disguise, and you have someone that doesn't play much differently to how he does in the distant future. The standard Invisawatch and the Cloak and Dagger play about the same, but overall the Stockwatch has the better practical stats. Here in medieval mode, it's better to be constantly moving than being rooted in one place, save for a few exceptions. Your cloak lasts longer, and you can extend it by picking up ammo packs from fallen enemies, as opposed to traveling a short distance and stopping to regain that cloak again. They both are almost interchangeable, so use whatever one you prefer. But we can't just gloss over the Dead Ringer. This is the watch that most spies end up equipping because it's the easiest to use. The game treats spies that feign death like any other class that dies, so you're essentially rewarded with a free small health kit every time you do so. Though the speed boost upon activation is meant for you to escape while invisible, some spies will instantly decloak and use whatever time they have left to find a back to stab. This instant decloak also leaves you with only about half of the cloak meter to fill in, making activation pretty frequent if you don't die. It's so good that it's a central component in the spy meta, and is the sole reason why people complain about him having a watch in medieval. As far as spies' knives go, all share the distinction of having no windup while swinging and an instant kill upon a backstab. Both are important to consider because you can trick an enemy into revealing his back with specific movements to throw him off. Since most classes can't shoot you, it's easier to coax one into getting close enough for you to kill, and with your natural speed, you can lure them into dangerous traps. The Your Eternal Reward is the only knife that could be considered bad, as spies will rely more on their cloak than a disguise here. It's kinda nice to become the enemy you just killed, but not all disguises are made equal, and you may backstab something cumbersome like the Heavy. Worth noting is that you can disguise at no cost while you're in spawn, giving it at least some compensation. The Big Earner is a pretty solid option because it improves spies' already good mobility. You can use the speed boost to make an escape or trick someone into turning around. It also activates on a non-backstab kill too, so it's not a huge deal if you butter knife someone accidentally. The Spycicle is a straight upgrade to stock here, and deserves some special attention. Since you can't just not have a weapon, there's no such thing as losing your icicle when you ignite. You'll extinguish yourself as normal, but you'll get to keep the knife, making it useful against huntsman arrows and volcano pyros. The Conniver's Kunai is the most popular knife by far. It's most commonly seen alongside a Dead Ringer, as it's better to keep you alive. It's a little harder to land that initial backstab, but when you do, you can become as bulky as something like the Soldier. It's hard to stop a spy if he knows what he's doing, as he can heal off damage just by getting a lucky stab in and feign death to escape you. Not much can threaten a spy once he gets to this point, but a stray skull critter can certainly do the trick. If you can't get multiple kills in quick succession, you won't be keeping your extra health for very long, encouraging a constant flow of offense and trickery. Most of these knives will allow spy to taunt kill, but it's considerably harder to use since you'll audibly announce it. The skill floor of the average spy improves as the years fly by, and if you're careless, he can easily take advantage of the smallest moments you give him. Watch your back, knight. Watch your back. Before I get right into the tier list, I want to talk about Sandcastle because it plays out way differently than how standard medieval does. The addition of spells makes an absolute mess of things and puts all the classes on a more even playing field. You won't find them littered everywhere like on other maps, and sometimes you have to go out of your way to find an unclaimed one. Let's go through them and explain the impact they have on what's established. Ipsum Instantarium and Amplus Tripudio have similar functions, allowing everyone to climb the castle walls and heal a little bit each time. Though a little less useful on red, the small health regained makes it worth wasting. Amplus has the risk of fall damage, which can negate the healing, but it also applies knockback against close enemies. Deus Invictus and Caputus Crepitus are the common offensive spells you use here. The latter is arguably better, as it has the benefit of unlimited range and better damage before chip. Because it's a common source of fire damage, it bolsters previously niche items like the Darwins and my beloved Tarjipu. Even if the Pyro is flame retardant, he's not damage retardant and still takes the same base damage as everyone else. The Bloody Bats can displace a large group by launching them skyward. While they're in the air, it's unlikely they'll find a health kit to stop the bleeding, so it has a good chance to pick off a weakened enemy. It launches in an arc, which gives you a way to attack from behind and beneath the ramp. Barpo Cabalto is a health and invulnerability spell that can get you out of a quick bind. It's able to be shared with allies in close proximity, allowing you to act as a temporary medic for them. It can turn a losing fight into a winning one in an instant, or be something to simply waste on yourself when collecting a new spell. If you acquire this during the pre-game round, you can use it as the game transitions into the beginning of the first round and keep the health boon. Barpo Invisium is a tool that can be abused by a select number of classes. Spies already have a cloak, but now they can stab you while they're invisible, in case they weren't annoying enough. You can perform certain actions like charging and you won't break the spell, making it extra good on demo. The rare spells are even wackier, like Paedum Solaris. For many, the forced third-person perspective is a negative aspect, but the buffs more than make up for it. Infinite jumps, faster movement speed, and a shrunken size can help you outmaneuver and confuse any enemies you end up facing. There's a faster firing speed trait that you'll only find on Medic, as if spamming the crossbow wasn't already good enough. Perhaps more famously, this spell is known for killing the user if it ends while you're on a slope or close to a ceiling or a player. This sort of thing happens rather frequently too, so it's good to have a sense of when the spell's about to end. You'll generally be okay if it ends while you're in the air. Imputum Fulminus can either be the best or the worst spell you've ever used. On its worst days, enemies could easily escape from the electric clutch, and it's a complete waste. On the flip side, it can trap enemies and either carry them away from you or lock them into place for you to easily kill. This can lead into extremely creative combos that you can't even get mad at, like, oh my god! No matter what though, it must be respected lest you carelessly wander into its pull. Perhaps the best spell here is Seismella Tremoro, which is the standard fireball on crack. It covers a deceptively large range and can be a game ender if used by blue on last. Since it deals multiple blows in quick succession, it'll quickly bring down even the bulkiest of enemies caught in it. Shielded demos may have a better chance at surviving due to their resistances, but even they'll have to turn tail once they see the meteors rain down. It can rack up kills like nobody's business and shuts down entire pathways to walk through, like the front gate of the keep. Actually, speaking of the gate, it's a genuine obstacle here compared to the group keep. Most people know that it can crush you to death upon closing, but many don't realize that it acts as a kill ceiling too. Many spells inflict upwards knockback, so you can feasibly set up a kill trap using it and really mess with the enemy. The Underworld guarantees a rare spell at the end, but before you enter it, consider your health. If it's too low prior, you may not be able to reach the first health kit before you succumb. If you're trailing behind someone, they may pick up the health before you do as well. If an enemy's behind you, you can potentially set up a little spawn camp on them from the other side of the warp. You can also camp the health packs and ruin their day. When you warp back to spawn, you temporarily gain crits, speed, and an infinite jump. If you're fast enough, you can use it to scale the wall and rain magic down on the point. The spells you pick up count as another weapon slot, so that means weapons with a holster and deploy penalty will actually experience it. Heavies can't cast spells while under the effects of the buffalo steak sandwich either, as it locks them to melee. Granting yourself mini crits will also boost the power of your spells, often being enough to drop light classes instantly. You can combo spells with weapons that synergize well with burning enemies, unlocking further potential on things like the sun on a stick. If you want to get really crazy, you can utilize the jump spell to bolster the man treads, or the invincibility one to offset the lost health of the Gru. Some spells will activate upon respawning if you were in the middle of casting it before you died. Lastly, it seems like the Underworld reward can give you a common spell on rare occasions. Sometimes Crumpkins will spawn from felled players, so if you can pick them up, you get to pretend you're a KGB heavy for a bit. So, what's the strategy in this chaotic mess? Well, It's advantageous to take control of the battlements because it gives you quick and easy access to 2 spellbook spawns. From there, you can look directly downwards at points A and B. Blue team has easier access to the underworld and should take the time to go there, for the reward can win the game in an instant. As for red, it's a little harder to justify going there since you need to be ready to defend C, but it has its own advantages. If you're ahead of blue team before they can enter, you can make sure they don't get a chance to reach the spell at the end by killing them. If you have a spell, it's better to use it rather than hold on to it for the perfect moment. You may end up never getting the chance once the enemy team wins. Other than that, it's literally medieval mode with a fantasy spellcaster motif, so enjoy the chaos while it's there once a year. It's finally time to organize all of this information into the tier list. Like the ones that came before it, classes will be evaluated based on general performance and ability to complete an objective. There are 4 levels of tiering each class will fall into. E tier is for classes that can't do anything better than anybody else. C tier is for those who have something to offer, but are otherwise unimpressive compared to their peers. B tier is for classes that are both good at killing and supporting the team, or otherwise good at completing the objective. The A tier is for the best of the best, hosting classes that can do it all better than the rest. This time around, there will be 2 tier lists based on how each class performs on red and blue. We'll start with the bottom tier. As expected, the only occupant of E tier will be the engineer, and this applies to both the lists. He has nothing to make up for what he loses in translation, and being stripped to only his melee weapons doesn't make him a very capable fighter. Nothing he uses has anything to offer his team either. It's just not recommended to play engineer at all, and offers nothing but a challenge to those looking for one. C tier will vary between teams, but here's my thoughts. It's notable that Sniper sits all the way down here on blue specifically, but it's mainly because he doesn't like to capture points. He'll shoot arrows at enemies on the point, but it's unlikely that he'll stand on them. Even if he does and enemies are attempting to defend, he could realistically only get off 1 arrow before he has to switch to melee. While it's true that Berghausen's later stages give him a good shot on red spawn doors, 1 arrow can't account for both sides, or more than 1 enemy. What he offers is a chance to take out 1 man safely before he has the offensive capability of an engineer. Pyro is in C tier regardless of what team he's on, purely for the fact that he doesn't do anything special. His problem is that he lacks ways to combat common things that outrange him. Unlike the other 2 here, he's more than capable of holding his own against multiple people. This alone makes Pyro the best in C tier. Spy is here on offense, and while it's true that all spies can be threatening immediately, it's harder for attacking ones to capture a point. By himself, he's not very threatening, though he's more likely to stand on a point than a sniper. His problem is that if he can't get a backstab, he's almost dead weight. If there's more than 2 people defending the point, Spy may not be able to take out both before he's overwhelmed. His style is more hit and run, and that doesn't suit offense very well. B tier has Sniper and Spy, but only on red. It's not hard to see why with the former, as arrows are a very powerful way to deter someone from attempting your point. It doesn't matter quite as much for a sniper to not stand on it, and he's usually somewhere relatively safe from reach. For Spy, it's really all about that hit and run. You can go in, take out however many targets you can, and make an escape away from the point. Enemies may chase you down and distract themselves from the primary objective completely. Positionally, you can be anywhere on the battlefield and still pose a threat, which can't be said for Blue Spy. Scout's vast team support, tricky mobility, and surprisingly potent offense makes him a good contender for the tier. The milk and the fan are undeniably great when you have a team that can capitalize on them, but he doesn't even need team support to be good on his own. His ranged attack options apply good pressure on any single target, and he can dip in and out of combat range at any time. He can get the upper hand or force an enemy to retreat for health easily, and that's what makes him competitive here. The soldier is an easy pick for the tier, as he has some of the greatest ways to bolster his team in the game. It can be easy to reach a full charge by using the Zatoichi, and multiple banners can happen in a single life if you're careful. His more ranged weaponry helps augment his speed issues, with the disciplinary action in particular boosting it reliably. He's powerful and helpful, and just having 1 soldier on your team is a big plus. Heavy is scary no matter what team he's on. Though better on Berghausen than De Groot, he can show up and scare away a whole team if he has crit gloves. On red, an enemy wouldn't want to give you 5 more seconds of crits. On blue, the enemy would have to rush in to take you out before you win the game. You can't underestimate the importance the KGB has on Medieval. Throwing food is good for your team, though it's better for you to be the ultimate killing machine instead. The A tier is same for both teams, and features the 2 stars of medieval mode, the Medic and the Demo Knight. The Crusader's crossbow is an insane tool on a class that can already hold his own in combat. He can stuff approaches and charges, support faraway teammates, and go bow for bow against enemy snipers. The fact that he has the mobility to dip in and out of combat and switch between his weapons makes him genuinely hard to kill, or even escape from. Let's not forget about that Amputator taunt, which can potentially heal your entire team at once. Depending on what side you are, you can either keep your defensive core in peak health, or you can bulk your boys up enough to overwhelm the enemy. Sure, Medic may fall to most high-powered blows instantly, but what he can accomplish while he's alive cannot be ignored. When on the field, he's always a high-priority target. As for the Demo, you already know what's up. He doesn't support his team conventionally with buffs and health, but he doesn't need that. He's a one-man army that can go anywhere he needs to with his unparalleled mobility and reach. His vast arsenal keeps things fresh and exciting, and there's a situation for almost every weapon he has. Hell, having a team composed entirely of Demoman isn't even a bad idea. He really can do it all, even if it's just in service of himself. A whole map was named after his lineage because he was always destined to rule. Bow down before the one true king of medieval mode. Once and for all, these are the definitive tier lists for medieval mode. Or, at least, these are my definitive tier lists. It's been a very long time since I first discovered medieval mode, and even back then it didn't look all too different from how it does now. During the later half of the 2010s, I released the first medieval mode tier list video, which has gone on to receive over 1 million views as of current year! In the time that's passed since I dropped that video, several more have come along from different people, all with their own things to say. It's more clear to me than ever now that the people yearn for the castle gates, polishing their blades and stringing their bows for the day they siege again. And I'll be right there, waiting for the next round. Medieval will last forever. Looks like you're still here. Well, if you've made it this far, then I suppose you deserve the forbidden knowledge. On blue team and blue team only, there's no respawn timer. Normally when you die to an enemy, you'll have to view its kill cam first, but if you immediately switch classes while you're dying, you get to skip that entirely. It won't work if you kill yourself or die from fall damage. Normally, if you try to activate third person while in a regular server, you'll be denied because SV_cheats isn't on. However, there's a console command specifically designed for medieval mode that allows for the use of third person without activating cheats. The command is TF_medieval_third person. Personally, I don't use it. And that's all I've got for you. Well, except this outtake. And then there's the second banana, which is even healthier than the chocolate. And then there's the second banana, which is healthier than the chocolate. Oh man. And then